Whatever we worship, we're going to become like that. Our character is going to begin to resemble that. Our behavior is going to resemble that. Our actions are going to resemble that. We become what we worship. Whatever we worship, we become like. And you see this in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, there are these things called idols. If you remember, they're little wooden, kind of doll-like structures. And people would take them, and they would paint eyes and ears and mouths on them, and they would set them in a place, and they would worship them, and that would be their little god. And you notice people who did this, who practice idol worship, over the course of the narrative of the Old Testament, they get to a point where they're no longer discerning, and they're no longer hearing from God, and they're no longer able to prophetically communicate the truth of God. They can't see, they can't hear, they can't speak. They're becoming just like what they worship. And it's interesting with this idea of idol worship in mind to read back through what we just read here. Notice in chapter 3, verse 4, when Jesus asks if they remember 1 Samuel 21, it says, and they were silent. They couldn't speak anymore. They're worshiping an idol. And their idol is their view of the Sabbath. They're not worshiping the Sabbath. They're worshiping their understanding of the Sabbath. And remember, their understanding of the Sabbath is, on the Sabbath, you do nothing. So it makes perfect sense when someone comes into their fellowship and has a need. You know what they do? Nothing. Because they're becoming what they worship. They're people who do nothing to bring people in to the fellowship. We worship. We become what we worship. And that's true in the negative. But First Orlando family, I want to tell you good news here today. It's also true in the positive. If we worship Jesus, the Bible says we will become like Jesus. Our character will be formed into the character of Christ. Our behavior will model Christ. Our thinking will model Christ. We will get to become just like Jesus. And so that's good news here today because there's a way forward. If you guys will just spend your lives and dedicate your lives to worshiping Jesus, He's going to put His character in you. It's what the Bible calls spiritual growth and discipleship. He will make you into a fully functioning follower of Christ. And together, we will see God do great things in Orlando and beyond.